Hello, fine individuals. Welcome once again to the Dr. Zeero Free Magic Secret Show, where Dr. Zeero is still cruising forward with the help of caffeine and such. It's late at night, but we're going to knock one last one out. This comes from a book called Amulets and Talismans by E.A. Wallace Budge. I was tempted to do one on the introduction itself, but I feel that it's important for the people listening to these broadcasts to actually pick up this book and read that one yourself. I don't want to spoil for you. This book is from the 1920s, I think, at some point. Is a curator of British Museum, wrote a bunch of occult texts. E.A. Wallace Budge. Important book. So this one is about Egyptian amulets. So I'm going to kind of skip around this and just some important information, little tidbits, try to keep this short and sweet. So Egyptian amulets, chapter 5. The Egyptians, in all periods of their history, were lovers of amulets, and they placed them in their houses and tombs, and set them up in their temples, and wore them when living, and caused them to be placed on their bodies when dead. They made them of many kinds of stones, both common and semi-precious, various kinds of wood, gold, copper, silver gold, ivory, bone, shell, wood, wax, faience, etc. The common word for amulet in the dynastic period was mk-t, which means protector. A synonym frequently used in the text is ujawu, the thing which keeps safe, the quote-unquote strengthener. Many of the substances of which amulets were made were believed to possess an influence or properties which could be absorbed by the wearers. Amulets with the names of gods or words of power inscribed upon them were held to be more powerful than those which were uninscribed, and those which had been quote-unquote blessed by the magician, and therefore contained a portion of his spiritual power, were the most powerful of all. Most of the Egyptian amulets known to have come from the tombs of Egypt and were protectors worn by the dead. It is probable that they are identical with those which were worn by the living. The oldest amulets from Egypt belong to the Neolithic period. Among them are figures in flint of the crocodile, some horned animal, goat, the head of a cow with a woman's face, maybe the goddess Hathor, the hippopotamus, the cuttlefish, and the objects which they can't identify. The first of two, The oldest amuletic sign used by the dynastic Egyptians is the Ankh, to which they assign the phonetic value of Ankh or An. What object it represents is not known exactly, but it was probably some part of the human body which the Egyptians believed to be intimately connected with generation and with the maintenance of life. The meaning of the word Ankh is life, living, in fact, everlasting life, and the life which cannot die. Every god and goddess and divine being possessed it, and by it their life was maintained. They bestowed it on kings and also on the souls who were acquitted in the hall of judgment, and those who received it lived for 100,000 million of years. This is me interjecting, but Moses came from the Egyptian mystery schools. Moses transferred all this Egyptian wisdom knowledge to the Jewish people. And I'm just going to raise a question right now. Is that what the Shekinah is? Is that where that's coming from? So if anybody's listening and actually comments on these things in a wider sense, that could be a really, really big magic secret. So anyway, when the Egyptians embraced Christianity in the 1st century, they adopted the sign, the Ankh, though of pagan origin, and its meaning, and it appears on funerary monuments side by side with the Christian cross. The amulet Ankh was made of wood, wax, metal, stones, or various kinds. This fact proves that the Egyptians did not know what object the Ankh represented. The principal funerary amulets were, so the funeral ones are the scarab, one of the class of the dung-eating beetles. The beetle collects a mass of dung, lays in it one egg, and then kneads the dung together, and finally makes it into a round ball of 2 inches in diameter. This done, it turns its head away from the ball, and with its hind legs rolls the ball along the ground into some sunny place where, under the influence of the heat of the sun, the egg is hatched, and the little beetle lives and flourishes on the excrement with which the egg has been surrounded. From the earliest times, the Egyptians associated this beetle with the god of creation and its egg ball with the sun. Ew. The god was believed to roll the ball of the sun across the sky, even as the beetle rolled its poop ball over the ground. And heat and life came from the sun, just as the larva of the beetle hatched in the egg ball and nourished on its substance proceeded from the egg ball. Couldn't we go with like a chicken and an egg analogy, guys? Did it really have to be this? I mean, there's all kinds of ways that you could describe, the sun and this like metaphor. Did it have to be this? That's just my question. The god who rolled the solar ball across the sky was Khepera, the roller, and in the book of Tuat, we see him pushing the sun into the sky at dawn. The Egyptians wore models of the beetle when living to give them the life and strength of the god of creation. They placed in their mummies models of green stone or black basalt or hematite of the Goliathus Atlas beetle to effect the resurrection of their dead kinsfolk. These are the well-known heart scarabs, on which copies of whatever Book of the Dead are inscribed. Colossal models of the scarab were set up upon pedestals in the temples. The examples which was found by Lagrange in the temple of Amun-Ra at Karnak was made of the reign of Amenhotep III. The largest known temple scarab is in the British Museum. It is uninscribed. It is 5 feet long, 3 feet, blah, 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 blah. And then they talk more about that. Okay, so another one, there's the Tet, or dead, which was associated with the backbone or certain of the lower vertebrae, to which it gave strength and stability in life, and renewed power to the back after death. The Tejet, an amulet which was commonly made of some red substance, e.g. red jasper, red glass, red wood, red porphyry, red porcelain, and carnelian or sand or reddish agate. Examples in solid gold are known and in gilded stone as well. Now, the jet is a conventional form of the genital organs of the goddess Isis, and it was supposed to bring to the wearer, living or dead, the virtue of the blood of Isis. It and the tet are often seen in the hands of statues and on coffins, and armed with these all-powerful divine amulets. The deceased was ready to enter the judgment hall of Osiris. The next, the text, blah, 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 Book of the Dead, talks about this. The yurs, or headrest or pillow, as an amulet is usually made of hematite and is rarely inscribed. When it was intended for use as an article of funerary equipment, it was made of wood and ivory and stone of various kinds, and wood and ivory examples are usually inscribed in the Book of the Dead, blah, blah, blah. The Ab, or heart amulet, was made of many kinds of red stones, red jasper, red glass, red porcelain, red paste, and red wax. And it was inscribed in the breast of the mummy in place of the heart, which was mummified separately. The upper part of it was sometimes made in the form of a human head. The heart was, to the Egyptians, the source of all life and thought, and it was believed to be the seat of the Ba, B-A, or what may be termed the heart soul, the soul of the physical body. It was connected in some way, which is at present not clear, with the Ka, or double, which was perhaps the subconscious vital power. Or are they talking about something called the Magid? And not Magid in the preacher sense, but the inner plane teacher. And if that's a Jewish magic secret, I'm not going to talk about now, but if you listen to my broadcast, you'll hear it later. So anyway, the texts show that the heart was supposed to contain the soul of Khepera, the self-created and self-existing god, and it was therefore immortal. The Book of the Dead contains several spells and prayers for the preservation of the heart. The text most commonly found on models of the heart is, blah, 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 according to one rubric, is as old as Menkauru, a king of the 4th dynasty, and according to another, as old as Sempti, a king of the 2nd dynasty. The other spells gave the deceased powers in the other world, but this chapter enabled a man to obtain the verdict of truth-speaking in the judgment hall of Osiris. It may be rendered as this: heart of my mother, heart of my mother, heart of my being, oppose me not in my evidence or testimony. Thrust me not aside before the judges. Fall not away from me before the guardian of the balance. Thou art my Ka in my body. Knimu, making sound in my members. Come thou forth to the place of happiness, or felicity, whither we would go. Make not my name to stink with the assessors who make men during my existence. Make good a good bearing with joy of heart at the weighing of words and deeds. Utter no falsehood concerning me in the presence of the great God. Assuredly thou shalt be distinguished, rising up as a speaker of the truth. Then we have the vulture, Nerti, made of gold and inscribed with in the Book of the Dead. When he died, to the neck of the mummy, gave the deceased the strength and fierceness of the goddess Isis, when she was wandering about in the papyrus swamps in the delta in the form of a vulture. The use of this amulet is not older than maybe 650 BC. The collar, or pectoral usekti, made of gold and inscribed in the Book of the Dead, when tied to the neck of the mummy, gave the deceased freedom from all possible fetterings about the neck. The use of this amulet is not older than the 26th dynasty. The papyrus scepter, Uaj, was made of mother of emerald and inscribed with, when laid on the neck or breast of the mummy, gave the deceased renewed youth and virility and all the qualities of the growing papyrus plant. It was worn as a pendant. Usually this amulet has the form of a budding papyrus shoot, but it is also found sculptured on a small rectangular plaque made of Neshmet stone. In the papyrus of Nebseni, we see in the vignette the god Thoth, or Thoth, as some call him, likely Thoth. And it's, again, interesting connection, Latin, thought. Is there something up with that? So Ibis headed, who is called the great god, presenting to Nebseni a plaque whereupon a papyrus shoot is sculptured. The text, which was supposed to be cut upon it, brought to the deceased the protection of the words of Thoth. The Udjat, a word which means literally eye, was an amulet made in the form, and we've all seen you will know a lot of people have it as a tattoo, the eye. It looks, you know what it is. It typified good health, soundness, safe protection, and physical comfort, and well-being generally. The twin eyes represent the eye of the sun and the eye of the moon in conjunction, the two eyes of the very ancient sky god Her. And it also ties into Japanese martial arts, mythology, and Buddhism and such. The sun and the moon are the eyes of God. And that's also in the Pikatrix. And another magic secret is they got the real Pikatrix out in print for once. Look for it. It's in hardcover. The real thing. The real thing. Not the Warnock version. It's a new one. Spyware Trell. Yeah, I'm not going to do any stories about the Pikatrix. You just found it here. So anyway, moving forward, there are found painted on coffins as early as the 6th dynasty, and they were painted on articles of funerary equipment throughout the dynastic period. And an ancient legend stated that the powers of evil succeeded in blinding the eye of the sun god Ra during an eclipse or prolonged storm, and that Thoth came to the god and healed his eye and restored it to his face. Another legend stated that Set, the devil, when prowling in the sky one evening, saw the crescent moon and swallowed it. But one of the gods, presumably Thoth, came against him quickly and speared him, and he was obliged to vomit the crescent moon from his body. We got another one. A spell, the recital of which would cause Thoth to bring Udjat to the deceased during his journey to the kingdom of Osiris. The rubric, more, we got to point to that. Okay, so the cow amulet, Ahat, was a figure of a cow wearing the solar disk and plumes between her horns made of gold, which was tied to the neck of the mummy. This was used in connection with hypocephalus, which was placed under the back of the head of the mummy and was formed of a series of circular layers of linen gummed together and covered with a thin layer of white plaster. This amulet was intended to represent the pupil of the Eye of Ra, and on it were drawn and outlined figures of solar gods, Horus Sept, Khepera, sons of Horus. Around these figures ran the text of Book of the Dead. The Egyptians believed that if this amulet was placed under the head of the mummy, it would emit heat and keep warmth in his body of the deceased until he arrived in the kingdom of Osiris. It was his heating pad. The chief god was Par, but in order to obtain his assistance, it was necessary to appeal to him by his secret magical names, which the text, your magic secret, ready, Haka, Haka, Hair, aul aua kersang klebate kaseran kalsata. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. An ancient legend stated that when Ra was about to set for the first time, the cow goddess, fearing that he would lose all the heat during the night, caused him to be surrounded with beings of fire, which kept him warm until he rose again in the sky. The amulet Ahat was supposedly to do for the deceased what the cow goddess did for Ra. The frog amulet is usually made of gold, hard stone, steatite, and glazed something else. But examples of it in gold are not common. It carried with it the help and protection of Heowit, the goddess who presided over conception and birth, and who may be described as the midwife goddess. She was supposed to be present at the birth of every king of Egypt, and she assisted Isis in resuscitating Osiris and in making effective her union with him. The general idea associated with the frog amulet was fecundity and fertility, and among many of the tribes in Central Africa, the women eat both the frog and the beetle, so that they may have large families. The little green tree frog appears in large numbers a day or two before the rise of the Nile, and the natives regard it as a symbol of new life and prolific generation. That's what it is. The Copts, probably having in mind the phases of the physical development of the frog, adopted it as a symbol of the resurrection. And it often seems seen sculptured on monuments in the catacombs in Alexandria, side by side with the Coptic cross. On a bronze object in the British Museum, a frog appears at the end of a phallus. Another one, we have the Nefer amulet, was frequently made of carnelian or sand, or some semi-precious red stone, but very large numbers were made of glazed faience, F-A-I-E-N-C-E. I keep dodging that word, so faience, and were pierced at one end so that they might be strung with beads on necklaces and pectorals. The object represented by the amulet was probably, in the late period, a lute, or some kind of stringed musical instrument. But originally it seems to have been the heart with the windpipe, ? Whatever the object was, it is pretty clear from the text that the amulet was supposed to give to the wearer youth, joy, strength, and happiness, and good luck generally. The word Nefer means good, to be good, beautiful, gracious, pleasant, and the like. The Ba amulet was in the form of a man-headed hawk wearing a beard. It was supposed to represent the heart soul, but it seems to be more probable that it was a symbol of the vital strength of a man, and the hawk portion of it suggests its relationship to Horus. At all events, the root Ba means strength, to be powerful. After death, the Ba was believed to visit the bodies whence it came from the tomb, and in graves narrow passages were left in the pits so that the soul might find its way there. In the pyramids of Meroe, openings were left in the stone covering near the apex so that the Ba might enter them, and a ledge was placed beneath each opening for it to stand on. And blah, blah, blah. The final union of all souls with their bodies was believed to take place in the heavenly Anu Heliopolis. Small figures of the Ba, made of gold and inlaid with semi-precious stones, and large figures of it with outspread wings, were laid on the breast of the mummy, probably with the view of preserving the body from decay. Some think that such figures, under the influence of the spells, flew to the place where the gods gathered together and represented the person whose body lay in the tomb. And others take the view that the soul, when it came to the tomb, took up its abode in the Ba figure. A very fine stone Ba with pendant breasts from Nuba is preserved in the British Museum, blah, blah, blah. The Sma amulet, SMA, was buried in the folds of linen swathings of the mummy or in the body of the deceased in order to give him the power to breathe. It is usually made of dark basalt or some brownish black colored stone. The Aku amulet represented the disk of the sun rising on the eastern horizon, and was worn so that it might give a man the strength and power of Horus or Ra. It was symbolic of renewed life after death and resurrection. This amulet was made of red stone and red glass or paste. The Shuti amulet represented the two feathers, symbolic of light and air, which are seen on the heads of Ra, Osiris, and Amun-Ra. The Atef plumes, which are the special characteristic of Osiris and Ptah Seker Asar, appear to be associated with the resurrection. This amulet was made of gold and semi-precious stones of various color. The Shen amulet seems to have symbolized eternity, or perhaps a very large but indefinite number of years. and the space embraced by the all-encircling power of the sun god. The hieroglyph is thought to represent the end of a cylindrical seal cylinder, which is either resting on or is being rolled over a piece of clay to make a seal. On the other hand, it may well be a picture in outline of a ring with a long bezel attached to it. The Ren, or name amulet. In some inscriptions, the name of the king is enclosed in what seems to be a piece of rope tied in a sort of double knot at the end of the name. As has been said elsewhere, the name of a god or man was regarded as his soul, and the knotted cord was intended to preserve it from evil magical influences and to maintain and prolong his life. The ordinary form of the Ren is who kind of looks like a little tampon, and is commonly called a cartouche. Number 19, the Serpent's Head Amulet, the one you've been waiting for, which was made of red stone or red glass or red faience, was regarded as a protection against the bite of the cobra and other venomous snakes. It was worn by the living and the dead, and the texts from blah blah are inscribed on the amulet show that it was intended to prevent the mummy from being devoured by the snakes and worms of the Tuat. Now on to the Manat. Amulet consisted of a necklace or collar to which was attached the curiously shaped pendant shown in the determinative of the word. This amulet was worn by the gods and goddesses, Hathor, Isis, Ptah, and Osiris, who in the minds of the Egyptians were associated with virility and fecundity, birth and new life, and also the resurrection. It was buried with the dead with the view of preserving them in the sexual desires which they had possessed in life, and providing them with the means for giving effect to them. Gives a little Vicodin, or no, what's that one? Not Vicodin. What's the one that gets it up? I can't remember. I don't use it. Well, it's nobody's business, but hey, whatever, I'm not that old. As an amulet for the living and the dead, it was made of lapis lazuli, and when intended to be attached to statues or bronze or copper, it was suspended over the back of the neck, through which it exercised its influence on the spinal column. The latter amulet, Makti, provided the deceased with the means of ascending from earth to the floor of heaven, i.e. the sky. An ancient legend says that Osiris wished to ascend to heaven, but had not sufficient strength to do so. Ra, seeing his difficulty, provided the ladder, and he and Horus, standing one on each side of Osiris, helped him to ascend. A variant text says that the helpers of Osiris during his ascent were Horus and Suti, or Set. Models of this ladder in stone and wood have been found in the tombs, and a picture of the ladder is given. Blah, blah, blah. The Two Fingers Amulet, made of green stone or black basalt or obsidian, was placed sometimes loose in the coffin and sometimes among the swathings of the mummy. It was intended to take the place of the two fingers of the god who helped Osiris to ascend the ladder of Ra. Okay, it's the extra helping thing. Among the primitive inhabitants of the Nile Valley, models of the head of Hathor were worn as amulets by women who wished to become mothers or of large families. This amulet had two forms, the head of the cow and the head of a woman, whose ears were large and flat like those of a cow. Both forms were cut upon plaques and scarabs, which were worn as pendants or of necklaces. The cult of the cow probably originated in the Sudan, in the regions which are inhabited by the Bakara, or cattlemen, at the present time. The Kaf Peshesh amulet was used in the ceremonies connected with the liturgy of opening the mouth, quote-unquote, and was supposed to restore to the jawbones the power of movement, which had ceased owing to mummification. A couple of amulets were used in connection with the Kaf Peshesh, the exact significance of which is unknown. Each has two forms, namely, listen to this, made of different kinds of iron ore, protection Horus, God South. They were inserted among the linen swathings of the mummy and brought to its protection Horus, god of the south, and Set, god of the north. The Steps amulet, Ket, was made of faience, greenish blue or white, and symbolized the support on which Shu stood when he separated from earth from the sky above it, and also the double steps, which resembled the step pyramid of Saqqara in form, on which the god Khnummu stood. when acting as a creator god. Among other less known amulets may be mentioned the Apir, signifying abundance, prosperity, the shuttle, Nert, the symbol of the goddess Nayet, the solar disk on the horizon, the mason's measure, the carpenter's square, the white crown, the red crown, the helmet, the vulture, and Uraeus, Nebti, the knot, the hand, clenched and open, the offering tablet, the ka, and the full moon between horns. For drawings about 50, the pectoral tablet, so let's move on a little bit here. Like the Sumerians and Babylons and the Egyptians made many of their amulets in the forms of animals. Among these may be mentioned the bull, it's always the bull, lion, lynx, cat, dog-headed ape, smaller apes, jackal, set, the pig, shrew mouse, hedgehog, ichneumon, hare. Very few amulets are found in the tombs of the Old Kingdom. Under the New Kingdom, the use of such amulets became commoner. And it is from its tombs and buildings that the large collection of amulets, blah, blah, blah. Amulets in the form of birds are comparatively few. The commonest are the Bennu, the phoenix, the vulture, the hawk, the heron, the swallow, the goose, the ibis. The commonest amulets in the form of reptiles and insects are the turtle, the cobra, the viper, the scorpion, the large snake, the apshate, a kind of beetle, the abit mantis, the grasshopper, the frog, and various kinds of the dung-feeding varieties of beetles. Obsessed with that, huh? Amulets in the forms of fishes are not very common. Some of them will probably represent the Abtu fish and the antfish, which are mentioned in the Book of the Dead. They were supposed to swim on each side of the boat of Ra and to drive away every evil creature that came to attack the god. A few amulets in the form of the fish with the wide, large mouth, which is seen on the heads of figures of the goddess Heimat, are well known, but which of the fishes mentioned by Strabo it represents has not yet, I believe, been decided. The Ab, or fighter fish, and the blah, blah, blah. One of the largest class of Egyptian amulets is formed by figures of the gods, goddesses, and lesser divine beings. Some of these were prophylactic in character and belonged to the same class as the figures which the Sumerians buried under the floors of their houses and under the floors of the chambers in which men lay sick, to protect themselves and their property from the attacks of devils of every kind. Some may be compared to the teraphim of Laban, which Rachel stole and carried away in her camel's saddle, and to penates of the Romans. To this class also belong the long series of wooden figures painted black, which I saw in the great hall of the tomb of Thotmes III in the valley of the tombs of the kings of western Thebes. In Egypt, the tomb had to be protected from evil spirits and devils as well as the house, and this was effected by placing figures of the gods in the mummy chamber of the tomb, and by burying amulets in the four walls. Thus, under blah blah, so talking about that, a little bit about that, prophylactic figures, and then still going in. Every large collection of Egyptian antiques creates a great number of small figures of the principal gods and goddesses. And we have a good idea of that. We got a wonderful list here in this book of all these wonderful, man, so many great tattoos you could get if you just got this. Everybody would be, wow, that's so cool. Look at all that shit tattooed on you. Moving forward. Doody-doody-doo. Man, I don't want to waste any of you guys' time here. Sometimes Dr. Zeero doesn't always know what to say. Sometimes Dr. Zeero just, sometimes he just prattles about. I want to say Tremors with Kevin Bacon is a great film. Body Rock with Lorenzo Lamas is highly entertaining. And, sometimes there's good, bad movies, what have you. I think Leprechaun is a great, total enjoyable film. I like that one a lot. Ooh, ha ha ha. You should check out Street Trash and watch The Fly with Jeff Goldblum if you haven't seen that again. I'd like to recommend Hereditary. I thought that was a great film. The original From Dusk Till Dawn. It's never ending. Never ending. Okay, back on the fucking thing. Spell to destroy Apep, spells full of difficulties, blah, blah, blah. Such is a summary of the contents of the magical text which are inscribed in the middle. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that really is it for today. I'm glad I could talk a little bit about movies. That will be my outro, I guess, because I hope that was slightly entertaining. So again, this is the book Amulets and Talisman by E.A. Wallace Budge. Please hit the subscribe button, let people know I exist, and here's your awesome outro for the evening. Adios.